And a very happy Thursday morning to you. I'm Gary Sutton. This is the Gary Sutton Show on News Radio 910 WSBA. Lots happening today. You heard Mark just update on the news this morning. They actually had a satellite see some debris, one piece being like 80 feet long, and another piece being like 12 feet long, about 1,500 miles off the coast of Australia. But we also have a lot of bad weather there right now. And the satellite pictures that were taken on March 16th. So I'm not sure how much, with currents and so forth, that some of this stuff might have moved, or even if it is the debris from that plane. We're going to get some later updates on that this morning from Simon Owen. And we'll also check in with Peter Field, who's an aviation consultant, a pilot, and a former aircraft maintenance officer, to talk about the focus of this whole jet hunt and just what might have happened on down the line. And it's also the beginning today of the Field of 64, the NCAA tournament. And I'm going to tell you all kinds of things about it today. And I'm also going to offer you a chance to have me take you out to dinner. How's that? By picking a Final Four and the winning score. All right? And we'll do that this morning later on in the 11 o'clock hour. But starting out the day today, we would be remiss if we didn't introduce Chris Markowski, the Watchdog on Wall Street, a mainstay here every Thursday morning. You can set your clock by him. Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Doing well.
Are you a big basketball fan at all?
Well, I love the sport. I haven't had really as much time to really follow and watch the games.
That's silly work getting in the way, is it?
Let's just put it this way. I mean, maybe if I had the president's schedule, I'd have time to fill out a bracket. But right now I just don't.
Yeah, can you see the president sitting down right now? Should I work on the Ukraine or should I work on the Final Four? I'm not sure. It's rough. By the way, I sat down yesterday. And you'll be proud of me. I sat down and I listened to Janet Yellen, the new head of the Fed, and her press conference yesterday. And when I walked away, I thought maybe I needed counseling. I wasn't sure what she said. And then I thought I was really stupid. So you probably watched a little of this yesterday, I would think. What did you walk away thinking? I thought maybe she'd say, well, we'll give her some definitive things here. I didn't think she was incompetent or anything. I just wasn't sure what she said.
Well, I mean, Janet Yellen
doesn't matter what she said.
Yesterday, basically came out and said that, we are not going to be giving much forward guidance because we just don't know. And the guidance that they've given out previously really, hasn't worked, and some of the metrics that they've used just haven't worked. But we are going to be decreasing by $10 billion a month, and they're going to continue on that path. So, quite honestly, I'm glad to see that they're cutting back. For the most part, does anybody really understand what the Fed does at any given point in time? It's almost like they're spinning a wheel and they're trying to, figure out what to do. And in my opinion, I think that, decreasing their money printing is actually going to be much better for the economy. Interest rates do need to rise. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. That'll bring some normalcy out there to this, ridiculously low rates that everybody has at this point. It'll help people out in regards to the money that they're keeping in their bank accounts will have a higher interest rate. And I think that the return to some sort of real world, rather than the fake world, will inspire and encourage a lot of Type A personalities, business people out there that might have been holding back due to these ridiculously low and they know artificially produced interest rates.
One of the things that she did talk about yesterday that I was glad to hear, and she said she cited the broader measure of unemployment and underemployment known as the U6, which includes people who have part-time work but would prefer a full-time job. She also mentioned long-term unemployment among the indicators on her economic dashboard, a new word that she introduced to us yesterday. And she said, we know we're not close to full employment, not close to employment consistent with our mandate. And I was glad to hear her use the U6 because I think the U6 is a much more inclusive number. It's not the one that we normally hear when people come out with it because it really doesn't help them. Your thoughts about that yesterday? She actually finally included that number in there as well.
Well, a lot of people, they don't, like I said, they don't pay they don't pay that close attention to that number. And there's also the household survey too, because you're taking a look at the people out there that are out there that have small businesses out there, and the people that are working within households. I think that that's important that you do pay attention to that number. Again, the metrics that the government uses in regards to unemployment. We already know that they tinker with them. If you could remember what happened prior to the election in 2012 and how funny that was in regards to the employment numbers improving right up into the election, and then they're getting changed after the fact. They use a lot of seasonal stuff. They do a lot of guesswork in regards to them, and I think people kind of take them with a grain of salt, whether it be the employment numbers or whether it be the inflation numbers, which I think are even more ridiculous. I think that the Fed right now, at a size economy that we have, doesn't have the type of control that they used to. And I think at this point in time, I think really a lot of it is guesswork.
I want to switch to something else right here, Chris. I read about a study yesterday. 38% of employers will lay off workers if minimum wage is hiked. It was a brand new study out, and it'll be increased as President Obama, if this whole thing goes down as President Obama has proposed, the $10.10 an hour thing. I see out in some places in California they're asking for $15 an hour. It said roughly 54% of the study participants said they would reduce hiring, and 65% said they would raise prices on their goods and services. Again, so many people say, well, it sounds great to say we want to raise the minimum wage, but in the long run, it has consequences.
Well, you want to raise the minimum wage, it's really simple. You just enforce the immigration laws. That's the best way to raise the minimum wage. You take a look at, the amount of people that are working here in this country at below market rates because employers can pay them below market rates. Well, that would change very, very quickly if we actually enforced our immigration laws and we didn't allow employers to hire people like that. I kind of laugh at all this immigration nonsense because they really wanted to solve the problem. If they really wanted to, they could clear it up in a couple weeks. It's not a big deal.
What would you do?
You just make sure that you have to be legal to work here in this country.
Yeah.
And if you hire somebody that is not legal, well, then you know what? You're going to pay the price, and there's going to be consequences. I find it very hard to believe that we have a government that can listen into every one of our telephone conversations but can't determine whether or not somebody is legal when they get a job. It's nonsense. It's trying to kid.
Interesting to me, I was reading a story this morning. I really just kind of glanced at it as I went by. 108 illegal aliens locked up in a house, and someone finally got them out yesterday. But when we talk about people coming here to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that you and I have, and you say, okay, geez, this is what they're going through right now. And so then you have the left that'll run out and say immediately, oh, well, then you got to legalize that. No, you have to enforce rules because what's happening right now in the country, and with a wink and a nod from a lot of our politicians and our businessmen who hire these people, is they're looking the other way and saying, well, this is all part of the fabric of the United States, and it's not, and it shouldn't be.
Well, to the left, it's not even about legalizing. It's this path to citizenship and guest workers. We've got millions of Americans that are not working, and we need guest workers.
Yeah.
I mean, the logic behind this is so moronic. It really is. The U.S. Chamber, which is the buddies with the establishment Republicans.
Test. This is a statewide required monthly test of the Emergency Alert System, originating from the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency, Harrisburg. This is only a test.
In our restaurants and then the kitchens and so forth. I'm thinking, what? That's exactly the problem.
You're going to have to pay people. You're going to have to pay people a wage, which is going to attract them there. And you know what you're going to have to do too is you're going to have to do away with a lot of the government entitlements, which are keeping people from going out and working. There's jobs there. Okay, you could say to these people, "Look, you want to do, you really got unemployment? Well, here's a job here. I don't want to do that job. Tough."
Yeah, why is it out of vogue, though, in our country to say, you know what, we'd like to enforce our laws? Because people say, oh, you want to go kick the doors down and throw people out and all that kind of stuff. I say, no. What if we enforced our laws, as you said a moment ago, so simply, and we said, geez, you have to have basically legal status to have a job in the country. How unreasonable is that? What would be wrong with enforcing their laws?
Try getting a job as an American. Say, go over to Europe and try to get a job.
Yeah.
Try to get a job at McDonald's. You try to get a job being a busboy at a restaurant. It's not happening.
And then you have the other argument. Then you have the other argument that's this, and I hear this ad nauseum, and I just want to spit up when I hear it. Sorry about that; it was a little too graphic. But and I say, well, they're doing jobs Americans don't want to do, and I say, okay, what are the numbers out there on the types of jobs that many of these illegal immigrants are doing, illegal aliens? And they'll say, well, they're in agriculture. As you mentioned a moment ago, some pickers and so forth in Florida. They might be we find a lot of them in construction right now, although when construction goes bad, a lot of them went back home. So you say, okay, well, how many are in that? Well, there's 25%. I said, so 75% of the people think that job's okay. 25% of the people are filling that. And how many people do we have out of work in this country? So that doesn't really hold water with me. Your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, the whole immigration, I agree with you. The whole immigration thing has been absurd for a long period of time, and it's a nefarious type of marriage between Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah.
You see, Republicans want it because they're beholden to the U.S. Chamber and big business that want to continue to have this cheap labor source out there.
Well, they also want to be liked, and they want to get a few more Hispanic votes too. But go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, well, but the reality is they're not going to get one. They're pandering to the U.S. Chamber. That's who they're pandering to.
Right.
They're not going to get those Hispanic votes. They're not going to vote for Republicans. They just want to get the money from the businesses from the U.S. Chamber. That's a farce. And Democrats want it because they want more votes. The reality is it's not going to work. It never has worked. We need to assimilate people, especially the whole guest worker nonsense. That to me that's nuts. If you want to bring people in that come here, that go to college, that get themselves advanced degrees, I have no problem with that. I have no problem with trying to attract those types of people. But we already have a whole set of workers here in this country, unskilled, that need to become skilled. And you become skilled by starting out and working in some of these jobs and working your way up. And you mentioned, minimum wage. Minimum wage would take care of itself on its own if this was the case.
That's right. I was just thinking about the guest worker thing. Though it might not be that bad an idea if we could maybe get guest congressmen, guest senators, a guest president now and then. I don't know. Maybe it's worth thinking about. We're going to take a quick break, Chris. We'll be right back with you. And wanted to give you a little quote I heard this morning on a blog and let you kind of mull it over. Chris Markowski, the Watchdog on Wall Street, with us here on the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show. We're with Chris Markowski, the Watchdog on Wall Street this morning, dealing with all things economic. I was reading a blog this morning, and I saw this one response, and I was thinking of you, Chris, because, you always talk about, having your own business. And they were talking about the minimum wage, and this guy said, here's a simple truth. Understand it, and you'll get more out of life. When you work for somebody else, you get what you are worth to them. When you work for yourself, you get paid what you are worth, period. I thought that was an interesting response this morning.
Well, yeah. There's always a grand search out there to try to find people, at least I do. It's hard to find. You try to hire people that are going to treat your business the same way that they would treat their own.
Right.
And, like I said, I never, minimum wage. I wanted to try this sometime and, how long would it take before, if I went in and I took a minimum wage job at, let's say, Dunkin' Donuts and McDonald's, before I was making twice that? If you go into one of these jobs, the guy, the manager, the owner of any of these establishments are going to notice if you do that immediately, and they're not going to want you to leave. They're not going to want you to leave. They're going to do everything and anything that they can to keep you. I got a kick out of it. There was some story out of the Chicago Times, and this shows you just how dumb journalists are. They was interviewing some guy who purported to be working for minimum wage for 25 years. Now, that is so ridiculous at its face that it didn't. The funny thing, it didn't even spark the journalist's attention to inquire why someone or how someone could be working for minimum wage for 25 years. It's just stupid. You're obviously not doing a very good job. But you could see it, though. You walk into an establishment sometimes, and you can watch the people working, and you could see who wants to be there and who doesn't want to be there.
Yeah.
Right away.
It's interesting. No matter what employer you go into, someone's going to ask you this question. What are your goals? I imagine you probably say something like that to your people when you hire them. So what are your goals? And they'll say, well, my goal is to work for 25 years for minimum wage, or my goal is to reach for the maximum opportunity. What is the maximum opportunity, Chris, in this company? Where could I possibly go? Most of us, I think, take the latter, not the former. And the idea that continues to be engendered by a lot of our politicians out there who are whoring themselves out for votes is, reach for that minimum wage, reach for that middle class, crawl into the middle class here instead of saying, hey, the country's your oyster. If you want to go out and you want to have a great idea and you want to develop it and you want to be smart, we don't do that enough, I don't think. And I think that's one of the biggest crimes perpetrated on us right now by our betters, known as the politicians who represent us.
Yeah, again, there's people think that the whole American dream. They talk about income inequality and all these things. I've been saying for a while. I do believe that because of crony capitalism, we're basically a socialist country at this point in time. We are. They call it crony capitalism. Crony capitalism is synonymous with socialism. The size of government's gotten huge. Government entitlements have grown just to these ridiculous levels. With all that being said, you can still rise up and you can do very, very well in this country, where in other places around the world, including Western Europe, you cannot.
We're talking with Chris Markowski, the Watchdog on Wall Street this morning. Chris, let's turn to the Ukraine for a moment. We saw the Russians seize 2 Ukrainian bases in Crimea yesterday. The president came out basically so far and said, stop, or I'll say stop again, and I'll put some sanctions on you won't care about. What is that going to do to, the economic look here in the world right now? What potentially is out there as you can see it?
Well,
if anything.
I take the tack that, again, you got to, and unfortunately, the news media has not put this into perspective at all. Because they refuse to look into history. Crimea was a part of Russia for a longer period of time than California's been a part of the United States.
Right.
You take a look at a map of Europe, and you look at it just over the past couple hundred years, and you see the borders change and things move, and we all know what's happened. Post World War I, post World War II, and very, very unique place. You take a look at the first part of the UN's charter in regards to self-determination, and they talk about that.
Right.
People being able to determine what they want to be. I mean, for crying out loud, that referendum that they had over there basically said we want to be part of Russia. With that being said, we've allowed a lot of this stuff to happen because for some reason Barack Obama has got this messianic. He believes his own, BS.
Yeah.
He believes that just by the sound of his voice that people are going to see his way and the way that the world should be. John Kerry talked about 19th century Russians acting in a 19th century way rather than a 21st century way. Who do all these people think they are? They think that human nature's changed over the past 10,000 years.
Well,
they are that arrogant that they think that they're just so wonderful and awesome that they're going to just bow to Obama. We basically gave in to everything that Vladimir Putin wanted as soon as Barack Obama took office. We took away the missile batteries that were supposed to go into Poland and the Czech Republic. We took away the sanctions that we put on him after his invasion into Georgia. He's bowed down to the guy. What did you think was going to happen? Nobody takes us seriously anymore, and we don't have any good options at this point in time. And the reality is that nobody takes us seriously.
Yep. And they're not going to take us seriously unless something changes here. And now it's one of those things where I'm not sure even if you change, anyone's going to take us seriously.
It's for real now. We're putting sanctions on individual Russian citizens.
Like 12 guys.
This is like a joke. Yeah. It's like something you'd read in a comedy. I don't even think the media really digest what we're doing. It's absurd.
The Russian media did because that's exactly what they said.
Based upon global warming.
Yeah, the Russian media said exactly that. It's a joke. Hey, Chris, great having you on this morning. Get a little time to watch the Field of 64 start today. Come on now.
Syracuse is playing today. I'll try to.
All right, very good. So, I'll look forward to talking to you again next Thursday. Have a great week, okay?
You got it. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chris. Chris Markowski, the Watchdog on Wall Street, with us here on the Gary Sutton Show.